Hello, and welcome to Bong Table. I'm Mass, and this is another Conquest Battle Report. Today's list is 100 Kingdoms versus Dweg. I am playing a list from Dashun, who I've named Master of the Charge, and this was his idea. You can find him on the Discord, just type in Dashun. I asked him what he was playing, he sent me this, and I was like, okay, this looks kind of cool, I'm interested. I'm gonna record a game with it, see how it plays, and make a battle report of it. And if he's got anything to say, he can, message me in the Discord, hit me up in the comments below. If you want to say anything, Dashun is located in the Conquest General Discord. You can usually find him around 100 Kingdoms, so if you want to ask him more questions about how he built this list, where his ideas are coming from, go right ahead. As for myself, I just played it. So, this list is 100 Kingdoms, and it's in the Veterans. We got our two warlords, what is the Mounted Noble Lord and the Priory Commander of the Crimson Tower. For the Mounted Noble Lord, he's just running, he's got Supremacy, Speed of Horse to make that unit of Household Knights really good. The Flesh Cleaver, I gotta say, Flesh Cleaver really surprised me for what it was doing and how it works, because it gives Fiend Hunter to the character as well as Deadly Blades. And having 5 attacks on a Mounted Noble Lord with Deadly Blades is actually, really nice. It did a bunch of work to a unit of Dragon Slayers where my opponent rolled a bunch of 6s and triggered Deadly Blades, and it was taking 2 wounds instead of 1, so I was just, cutting through the Dragon Slayers, while normally I would be doing nothing because they have Harden 2, so they ignore Cleave 1 and Brutal Impact 1, and even Brutal Impact 2 from the Crimson Tower, so it's just throwing weighted dice at them, so when they're rolling 6s for defense off of the Flesh Cleaver, it was just like, hey, more damage, hey, more resolve, so I was happy there. For Open Arts, we got Weapon Master, not Master of Weapons. And finally, for Masters, we got Tip of the Lance. That just gives Wedge, so that gives you Cleave +1 when you make a successful charge with the regiment that this character's in. 4 regiments on the Noble Lord. We got 2 units of Mounted Squires. They're 4 stands each. They have been veterans, so they get +1 Clash, go to Clash with base with that Court Palatine to always be inspired. 4 stands base, I actually kind of like. They had a little bit more survivability to them than they probably would normally at 3 stands, just because of that extra 4 wounds. They're still very fast at 9 movement, and my opponent who was playing Dweg was kind of like, okay, so you wrap up the horses? I'm like, yep, and then I'm going to go for objectives, and then I get those done, and then I'm going to start going for the range units and start tying up things. So I'm actually starting to enjoy Mountain Squires a lot. I didn't really get to use Opportunist this game, and it's a little trickier for me to do just because of how you charge things and trying to get into the side or rear stuff. And usually when you start trying to go for that angle, because they're speed 9 and you're so far up the table, your opponent just kind of counter deploys against them, and so they kind of block up and secure that flank, so you can't get that opportunist side charge to increase your damage by rerolling your hits. For the next regiments I got 2 units of Household Knights. One is in a 6 stands. They are veterans as well with +1 Clash, Standard Bearer, and Turning Champion. Going up to speed 9 on that charge really makes the Household Knights very good to successfully get in and do damage. I've kind of talked about this before in my other videos if you want to kind of see more of a deep dive, but I'm kind of leaning towards Household Knights as a brick in veterans to be that big hammer cav unit that all the 100k players want. If I was to change anything in this list, it would move Faint's Roar on the Mounted Noble Lord as heirlooms instead of the Flesh Cleaver, but that changes up the list because Faint's Roar is currently on the Priory Commander. But they still did really well on their impacts with Speed of Horse, with Tip of the Lance, and their Clash, and how many there are. It was still really good and effective. And that Turning Champion just going to speed 9 on the charge really keeps them safe because now they're further back to make those charges. Lastly, in his warband, he's just got Household Knights. They're not veterans, they just have a Standard Bearer. It's just 3 stands of them. They're really there to just score objectives, kill some, score some zones, kill some objectives, tie up stuff. They're just kind of your throwaway, annoying Household Knights. You don't really expect a ton of work out of these guys because they are Clash 2, but they will, tie up some stuff and do some things, so they're kind of nice. What we got here? Priory Commander. Here we go. So, Priory Commander of the Crimson Tower, long lineage to take an heirloom, Faint's Roar, that gives you Glorious Charge, so that's +1 Clash on your impacts and Terrifying 1. because Order of the Crimson Tower already have Terrifying 1, you just kinda, you don't really get that benefit. But they kinda need that +1 clash to be effective, is what I really found. Like, being Clash 3 on the charge is not that effective when being Clash 4. And that's what makes Household Knights really good, is because they're so accurate with their impact stacks, because you can get them up to Clash 4 with Ophane's Roar, re-rolling 6s from Speed of Horse, and their Brutal Impact 1. Like, what's not as good as Brutal Impact 2, of course, but it's still very good because you're hitting more. Like, you're more accurate, so you're getting more dice rolling and dice through for your opponent has to roll defense rolls for, and then potentially resolve rolls for. So, really, one unit of, like, I find of Shock Cavalry, either that be Household Knights or Order of the Crimson Towers, kind of goes for Olafhane's Roar. In this list, it's split between the two. For myself, and personally for myself, I like to just dump it all into the Household Knights. Dash Moon likes to split it, and it still did really good. Like, I have nothing wrong against that, or like any super negatives to say. It's just a preference. But this unit did some work, did really well. Olfane's Roar is kind of a must on Order of the Crimson Tower because they get a majority of their damage of that Brutal Impact 2, especially if you March charge. But if you can charge and Clash, you do get that Wedge for that Cleave +1, so that's kind of nice. And that's a 5-stand unit with the Prior Commander, so there's like 6 of them. And finally, we got a 5 block of Order of the Ashen Dawn. They got their Bless, Cleave 1, Fearless, Impact 3. They also have Wedge. This, oh my god, I love this unit. Like, they're so good. They're so tanky. I should mention the Supremacy ability, the first Blessing, what gives Bless to everyone in the Warband of the Prior Commander. But if you already have Bless, you can get +1 attack or Harden +1. Majority of the time, I'm going for Harden +1 unless whatever I'm fighting has no Cleave. And then I'm just going for more attacks, and I'm just being like, Harden +1, Bless to reroll my defenses. So you just make them tanky, and they'll just sit there and fight stuff, and that's exactly what they did, and they did it really well. And I really like this unit. I can't wait for Order of the Sword or Order of the Sealed Temple to come out so that I can kind of drop down the Prior Commander of the Crimson Tower and fill in with a couple other things. But overall, I like the list. I played it. I had a good time with it. I really like what Dashman's done with this and using all horses in 100 Kingdoms. And you'll probably see more horse lists coming down the chain. Or not the chain, coming down the pipeline of content. For what's going on for myself, I do have a tournament in August that I plan to go to. So I'm probably going to play all horses because that's kind of what's been packed in my bag lately. And I'm kind of coming back to enjoying horses after the changes that were done in the May update. So I'm really excited there. And also, Ashen Dawn are great, and I want to throw these guys at more of my opponents because people hate them. I'm going to slow roll my rules for everyone, so you can check that out. And pause the video whenever you want, if you want to read up on something that I didn't talk about. So with that, that's the rules, and we're going to go look at my opponent's Dweg list. Here's my opponent's Dweg list. His Warlord is the Hold Raegh, who has the supremacy ability of in the presence of Memomancers, I think that's how you say it. Let's see here. If your army includes at least one Hold Raegh, one infantry regiment, your army may include a Minomancer apprentice at the indicated point cost, and just to any other officers regiment. Oh, that's nice. So he's got Champion Horns, Forged in Centuries of Conflict, TAC 1 and 2. I don't know what any of these do, so I guess we'll find out together. But for units, he's got a Hold Raegh. He's got a unit of Hold Thanes, 6 block. This is a very incredibly tanky defensive unit, what has that little bit of cleave to cut through things. Like, this is an anvil that bites back. He's got a 5 block of Hold Warriors with Bastion from the Herald of Stone. Probably could have put the Herald of Stone onto the Hold things so that they go up to defense 5 because they're defense 3, shield to 4, Herald of Stone to 5. Makes it really annoying to kill Hold things at that point. But even then, balancing out to 2-4 blocks is kind of nice. And then we got the 2 units of MSU of Dragon Slayer, so that's the 3 stands each. Cleave 3, Fiend Hunter. Harden 2 on the defense 3 basically just means they're always going to be defense 3 with the resolve 4 and 6 wounds. They're very good. I believe my opponent, yeah, everything has a standard, and I believe from the next thing, everyone also has a standard. So, what can I say about that? Dragon Slayers, really good. An amazing hammer unit. They can take some hits as well. and they're just good overall. My opponent's running 2 of them, so I gotta be careful about where they're gonna be coming out and who's gonna hit what when. So, my opponent is also running Tempered Sorcerer with the Gaft of Fire, so I believe the wizard takes a wound and they can get another, like, either spell dice or another success. They are in the Magma School? No, my opponent did this with fire, so my opponent misclicked here. This is supposed to be fire. They are focused, what just makes you re-roll 2 fails, and they're arcane 1 through 3. So this wizard is a juice wizard, any unit of Hold Raegh, 3 stands, they're just running around, being defensive, just carrying the wizard around so he can do all his work. Then he has another wizard who has riding the Hellbringer Sorcerer, who's on the School of Fire. I'm not sure what Memory Breath does, we'll have a look at that in a moment. And then he has another unit of Hold Raegh with 3 and the Hellbringer Drink. So that's kind of what my opponent's running. For relics, let's just read these. Champion's Horns, Forged Centuries of Conflict, let's go find those. Champion's Horns. If the regiment this character is currently attached to consists at least 4 scans, including the character adds +2 attacks. That's really nice because he's in a 6 block of Hold Thanes that are hard to kill. Then we had, there's Gaft of Fire. May choose to roll 1 additional die before him. Yeah, but this is the one where they have to pass a morale test or suffer a wound. So that's kind of nice, just juice your wizard more. Forged in Centuries of Conflict, the regiment this character stands currently attached to against the Iron Discipline special rule, so they won't take morale in the side. I think that it still ignores shield, if I recall. Oh, here's the Supremacy ability. For the duration of battle, all command stands, so this is like your leader, officer, banner stand in each unit, adds +2 to their attack characteristic. This Supremacy ability is always considered to be active. So that's actually really nice for when you're fighting stuff. And like your leader fights, because that's another 2 extra attacks in. Works really well on Dragon Slayers, basically anything, because another extra +2 attacks is really nice. And what was the last one? Something in here, let me find it. Memory Breath. Let's go find it. Alright, here we go. Memory Breath. Oh yeah, this regiment this character stands currently attached to against the Aura of Death +1 special roll. This was used against me, but because it's only Aura of Death 1, it isn't really hurtful, because it's just you make a regular roll, you either make the save or don't, and you take a wound. Sometimes it just trickles in some damage, and sometimes it doesn't because it's only +1 and not like 2 or 3 or something. So maybe this changes on, I guess, Flame Berserkers, because I know this Memory Breath was on the Hellbringer Drake, but I think this would work better on Flame Berserkers because I believe they already have Aura Death base, so getting another +1 on all of them would be really nice. And that's basically that. I'm going to start at the top and slow roll these rules, and then we'll get onto the scenario. Pause the video at any time if you want to read something in particular. I'm just kind of slow and rolling these. And yeah. Go look at the scenario. Today we are playing on Scenario 8 Bulwark, what has 2 objective zones, and then we have a friendly objective, and an enemy objective, and then we have a neutral objective. And you can't score the zone until you've killed your opponent's objective. So if you're at the bottom here and you're going to run up and score the zone, you can't until you kill this blue objective right there. Neutral objective, you just kill whenever, start turn 2 and everything. For points, you get 2 VPs for killing the enemy objective marker, 3 VPs for destroying the center objective marker, 3 VPs for each objective zone you're seizing, an additional 3 for each objective zone you're seizing. You gain 3 VPs if you've slain the enemy warlord, and you get 2 VPs for every enemy regiment that you've killed. So, you kind of want to kill 2 out of the 3 objectives right off the bat, so you kind of want to aim for that center objective pretty quick, and the objective in your opponent, or in the zone was closest to you very quickly, so that you can secure that zone and start scoring. And then from there, you kind of want to just like fight your way from the zone over here towards your opponent's closer zone, and then score both and win the game that way. This table, you can kind of put terrain in a bunch of decent spots, like either like here or here. Like there's a bunch of open areas where you can get terrain around and such. I'm just drawing squares. And so there we go, that's the square. So you can get terrain in a bunch of different spots, The problem I have is that these two 12-inch zones are they're pretty far away from each other, and it kind of ends up whoever takes the two objectives, like the one with your opponents and the center one, and secures their zone, is going to be up on points. And if they kind of trade back and forth kills or start killing stuff more effectively than their opponent, they just kind of ride that out to victory. And that's usually what happens, because it just takes forever to go from one side of the table to the other to support it after you've secured your side that you're scoring the objective zone that's closest to you, because usually your opponent will have a plan to kill your objective zone very quickly and do the same thing. So it ends up kind of being a brawl. I want to say, let's just use black. Kind of like that. That's not a very straight line, but you get the idea. It's kind of like a brawl where the table shifts as people start going across the table diagonally to try and secure their opponent's other zone to stop them from scoring or score it themselves while killing their stuff. So factions that can successfully do that or have the tools available to them do very well in this scenario. Let's go look at the table. Here's the table. For zones, we got this guy right here and this guy right here. We got the objective. I will change that color. We got my friendly objective, my opponent's friendly objective, and our neutral objective right here in the middle. We have 3 size 2 forests for obscuring and obstructing. We got a size 3 building. We got a size 1 obstruction. We got a hill. We got another hill. And I believe this is water. And that's our terrain. So overall, we have this path right down the middle that you can kind of just go right for both players. And that just leads to the center objective, while our zones are more, I want to say either defensible. Like, I'll admit, as the 100 Kingdoms player and trying to run cavalry 3 wide, I can't really get through here that well. Like, it's not wide enough, so I'd have to go down to like 2 front ranks for files, or 2 front files to get through there. So that kind of locks me out of that side from trying to defend and secure that up. But on the right side, it's a little more open just due to the different forests and the water and hill feature that allows me to kind of get around and through stuff. As well as there's some forests here that, you know, you can hide behind. You can hide behind and probably like score this potentially. I'd have to look at that better, but that's fine. This scenario on the right here is pretty wide open, and my opponent has 2 wizards, 2 Hold Ballistas, and a Hellbringer Drake, so it's pretty easy to shoot. Like, my only real defense is that this forest right here is size 2, and hopefully I can hide behind it before I get shot at. And then once this objective in the middle is dealt with, it frees up the middle so that I can start swinging my way from the right over to the left and start fighting off whatever my opponent plays. Overall, not a bad table. It served its purpose and did well. And let's get to turn 1 and show you how that went. Here's turn 1. I rolled and got both my Mounted Squire cards, and my opponent got his Tempered Sorcerer, who's hiding behind the woods there, the unit of Hold Ballistae, and the second unit of Hold Ballistae. I win the roll off. My opponent goes and decides to run up this unit of Hold Ballistae. So they're already looking to secure, like kind of either contest, get in the woods to either shoot this objective and anything that comes up the middle, and also provide support to shoot that objective and do some covering over there. So pretty good spot for my opponent right there, just kind of covering their side and flanks and also helping out where shots are needed. Myself, I just run up my Mounted Squires. They're already aiming to go for this objective right here, as well as I do with the other unit of Mounted Squires who are aiming to go for that objective there. They only have impact 1, so I'm going to be rolling 4 dice for impacts, and hopefully one of them gets through and does a point of damage, and then I can clash it for more damage. And that's kind of my goal here, to try and get rid of these objectives as quickly as possible. While my opponent has run up Hold Ballistaes and the super juiced Tempered Sorcerer, who are going to be looking at shooting my mounted squires. So, next turn he's probably going to get up into the woods here, then he's going to shoot into my mounted squires. He knows I can't pass this objective because it's an enemy objective, while he does know that I can pass this objective in the middle because it's neutral if I decide to run by it. So he is wary about this middle unit, but he does have 2 range units. He knows mediums are like Hold Warriors and the Hellbringer are going to be coming out next turn. So, there's thoughts in his head like, okay, I might get charged, but then I can counter charge, and if I hit mounted squires on the side, they'll die really easy because they're like defense 2, resolve 2, because they won't be benefiting from that shield. But overall, that's kind of turn 1. We're vying for positioning. We're already looking at our objectives and zones and securing them. Let's have a look at turn 2. Here's turn 2. I get both blocks of Household Knights, while my opponent decides to auto bring on his Hold Warriors and doesn't get his Hellbringer Drake. I believe I win the roll-off the majority of this game simply because I have less cards, so that bonus really helped me out with like that +1, -1 kind of thing. And first thing I do is that I dead draw a character, so my opponent goes. They run up these Hold Ballistas. I believe they shoot into this Mounted Squire unit, and they do a bit of damage right there, you can see. I then go, I charge the Mounted Squires into this objective, deal a bit of damage. They do impact damage, what succeeded, and then I do my clash, what succeeded. So now that objective's down to 1 health. That's really good for me, so I can clash and then charge or march off later to get to do other things. So I'm really happy about that. He then has his next unit of Hold Ballistas move up a bit, so just kind of waddle on up. They shoot into this unit of Mounted Squires. They take a bit of damage, and then I have to deal with that objective, so I just charge it. Like, up I go. I miss all my impact attacks, or my opponent rolls a defense, so I don't do any damage that way. But I do deal 1 damage with the clash, so it's down to 2 health. Now, the issue is, like, can I withdraw? How does the withdrawal work? Because I don't really want to be stuck on this thing, but then I'm now going to spend 3 turns stabbing it with Mounted Squires while I want people to go forward to start engaging Hold Ballistas, Hellbringer Drakes, getting in the way of his stuff coming out. Like, Mounted Squires are really good to just get up there fast and then die for you, so that the other things that actually do a lot of work, Household Knights, Crimson Towers, Order of the Ashen Dawn, anything else, Steel Legion, can all get up there and start securing their position. So this objective not being down to 1 health, while it's currently at 2, is just really rough, and I'm trying to think of a way to handle it, and I do come up with a way, and I'll talk about that more on the next turn, because I eventually figured out how to deal with it. Once there, my opponent then has the wizard who's behind this forest go, and just shoots off a fireball, killing a stand of Mounted Squires, so they're just down to 3. I just run up my Household Knights. They're there just to score that zone, maybe set up on the edge here after everything's done, just to keep people out. And then my opponent has his Hold Warriors go. They just come up the table. I'm not changing that color. He's just looking to get this objective, what's behind this tower. Kind of see the edge of it right there, so that he can start scoring that zone. He's a bit slower on it, but he's really worried that Mounted Squires are going to be coming for him, so he's putting more effort and energy attacking them, while I'm putting effort and energy attacking objectives. Then I just bring up my big brick of Household Knights, so I'm looking to have the Mounted Squires on the left side here, kill that objective. Then they're going to just, charge somewhere, either into that unit or that unit, and then the Household Knights are free to just run up forward and start attacking other things. So with that, that's turn 2. Let's go check out turn 3. Here's turn 3, and I auto bring on the Ashen Dawn, and I roll and get the prior commander with the Crimson Towers on. So my entire list is on the table. My opponent auto brings on the Hellbringer Drake, and then leaves both the Dragon Slayers at home. They did not make it. He did not roll 2 down, so they're stuck back there. First things first, I believe I win that roll off. My Mounted Squires go. They kill this objective, and I score those points. I then decide to charge. I believe I had to get like a 3 or a 4 plus with a reroll, but I make the charge and I get into the Hold Ballistas, I do some impacts. I don't know if I do any damage, but now I'm stuck in melee with them, and that's what I want, because I don't want that Tempered Sorcerer to just freely cast spells on everybody. I need him to die and get out of there. My opponent then goes, I believe he picks the Hold Ballista. They just march up. I haven't moved my Ashen Dawn up yet. Mounted Squires are out of the way, so he's kind of looking what he's going to do, because at this point my Household Knights are also back, so there's nothing around to really shoot that well, so he just decides to put some shots into the objective here, and he does his 1 damage, so he's working on that. I in turn withdraw the Mounted Squires, so they just move back, and then I reform 180, so they just face forward, and that's it, because the objective is on 2 wounds left. The Mounted Squires aren't really killing it. I'm engaged with it. I can't just leave it, so I just withdraw, follow the draw rules where I just literally move back, hit, and then I just spend my second action to just reform. An objective doesn't cause any hits back to you when you withdraw because it doesn't have any weapons. And yeah, they just sit there right in front of the Household Knights. His Hold Ballista go. They get into a fight with the Mounted Squires, who are right here. He does a bunch of damage. And then his, then I just have my Household Knights here. You can see right there. They just go in, charge the objective, kill it. Like impact attacks, clash. It's an auto win charge. Roll a bunch of dice. It's dead. Do my 2 damage and lock down that zone for scoring. Then my opponent, I don't know if he shoots any spells. I think he's still stuck in melee with Mounted Squires, so he just like flame rolls them as well to try and kill them off. But then there's like 1 alive with 1 health left, and he's just like, oh my god, because I just made enough rolls, because the punching capabilities of Hold Ballistas are terrible, so I just basically survived a bunch of that. So now he's still tied up with 1 guy left on 1 wound. He then brings on his Hellbringer Drake, who just walks on, who then will, I believe, shoots shots, just takes a bunch of shots and finishes off those Mounted Squires, and that's it there. I then look to bring on the Ashen Dawn, who run up the side of the table here. As mentioned earlier, I'm not really looking to come up from the side because I can't deploy very wide and it'll be in 2 blocks, and then, like, you know, your frontage is only 2 stands wide. I can't really reform to be bigger. So I'm really just pushing a lot of my forces and effort onto the right side, and like my general game plan is to just punch on the right and just like do a wide banking sweep all the way around and into my opponent's zone that way, while securing my zone. And it seems to be working out. Like, I have a lot of forces in one area. My opponent's divvied up a bit of his force to secure his zone, while I can continuously layer stuff to bring up and help out. Then my opponent's Hellbringer Drake or Wizard goes. Nothing's in range, so he just doesn't do anything. Then I just bring up the Priory Commander with the Crimson Towers, and then my opponent brings up the Hold Thanes with the Hold Raegh. And that's kind of where we're at. Oh, sorry. That's not where we're at. I finally just run up the Household Knight brick to be right here, because I'm going to, charge the Hold Ballistas and hopefully kill the Tempered Sorcerer, because I need to get rid of him, and then I need to go get into the Hellbringer Drake after. So that's kind of my plan. I also plan to have these Ashen Dawn just kind of run up here and just like side protect and just tank everything else that's going to be coming at them, while the rest of my list does that long charge sweep around the table doing all that work. So with that, that's the end of turn 3. Let's go look at turn 4. Here's turn 4. I win the roll-off, and my Household Knights charge the Hold Ballista with the Tempered Sorcerer. I kill them all at the impact. The Tempered Sorcerer gets to fight back, does a little bit of damage back here, and then I just reform to have these Knights just kind of like back and angled, so if anyone, like if the Hold Things charge them, then the Ashen Dawn can side charge them next turn. My opponent has the Tempered Sorcerer go, who then shoots at the Household Knights. Because the Tempered Sorcerer is dead, he has to choose the one on the Hellbringer Drake. That guy then just shoots a shot into the Household Knights and kills off this backstand. and the little damage from the fight back. So that's kind of it there. Nothing too crazy. Then I believe I just run up my Ashen Dawn to be right here. He then has his Hold Balliste go. They side shoot, I believe, the Ashen Dawn, get some damage. But Ashen Dawn are fine, they just block it all. Then I have, what is it? Oh, I have my Mounted Squires go, you can see them over there. They just run up the table. My opponent then looks at it and decides to put the Hellbringer Drake into melee, so he just charges the Mounted Squires, kills another one, wounds another one, so now they're in a fight. This also ties up his Tempered Sorcerer for me, so that's great on my part, because he's just going to be killing Mounted Squires, with something I'm totally glad to just die off at this point to that thing, while I hopefully get my Crimson Towers in and like side charge it, or front charge it, or whatever charge needs to be done. So as you can see, they just kind of ran up so that they can get into position to do that. My opponent counter deploys his Dragon Slayers to go after the Order of the Crimson Tower and the Household Knights because he doesn't like them. That's a good choice. Secures those flanks, makes sure there's hard, and if he puts both those cards at the top of his deck, even if he loses the roll-off, he knows he's going to be killing one of these two units. While I'm not really sure if I'm going to be killing one of these two units, just because I'm going to be losing out a lot of that cleave because of Harden. But it is a lot of dice, and I am going to be 3s rerolling 6s or 4s on the impacts, and then like 4s on the clash for everybody. So there are stuff happening there, and they can probably just do it with weighted dice. My opponent with the Hold Thanes decides to charge the Household Knights. He needs a 2+ with a reroll and rolls a 1 twice. So he just moves 2 inches forward. So that's really good for me because I don't have to deal with those guys anymore. And if he did get that, he would have deployed his Dragon Slayers where those guys used to be, and then, you know, now it's a Dragon Slayer versus Ashen Dawn fight. Lastly for him, Old Warriors, they just kill this objective and score that zone, while my Household Knights just kind of get into a better position to lock down that zone and prevent anything that might try and get into it, so I continue to score it. Zone for my opponent scored, zone for myself scored. Any regiments dead scored. He did kill the Mounted Squires last turn, so he got 2 points for that. I killed this whole Balliste and the character, so I get 4, I think it's character? No, I don't think it's character count, so I just get 2 points for the regiment there. So overall, I'm up on points, I'm pushing him back, and I'm looking to get those charges in to start killing his stuff. So let's go look at turn 5 and see how that turns out. Here's turn 5, and I had a tough decision. I was kind of picking, like, do I want the Order of the Crimson Towers to go, or do I want the Household Knights to go first? And I chose the Order of the Crimson Towers. I win the roll-off, and I go first, and so I charge the Order of the Crimson Towers into this unit of Dragon Slayers, what used to be here. And all the weight of the impact attacks, all the clashes from the cleave, and I just slaughter the entire unit of Dragon Slayers, wiping that out and securing the side so I can continue with my plan of just turning left and going across the table. My opponent then draws his Dragon Slayer card and charges my Household Knights. They break the unit because I lose these back 3 stands and this guy, and I believe the last knight is on 2 wounds with the Noble Lord. I then draw my Noble Lord, or not my Noble Lord, I draw my Household Knight card. They fight. I do actually a surprising amount of damage because that Flesh Cleaver really kicked in at this point. My opponent, when I rolled, got a bunch of attacks, like I unbroke myself and just attacked, and then my opponent is just like, alright, I'm gonna roll a bunch of 6s, and I'm like, cool, Deadly Blades triggers. He's like, what's Deadly Blades? I'm like, every time you roll a 6 for defense, you take 2 wounds, and he's like, god damn it. Okay, well, I only rolled 2 6s and 2 other hits, so that's like 4. It goes to 6, so there's a stand gone. I'm like, yep, and now you take 6 resolve, and he's like, what? And I'm like, yep, because that's wounds, and he's like, oh man. And then he rolls his resolve and fails all of them but 1, so there's 1 stand here with 6 wounds, draw 6, and this stand is down to 1 wound, so Household Knights, even though there's 2 of you, that roll the dice are really helping me there. Really like that. My opponent then goes, or that's after that, and then my opponent goes, he has his Thanes charge into my Ashen Dawn. My Ashen Dawn, they bless, defend a bunch of this. I believe this horse on the right is like down to 1 health, so yay, I still have all my weight of horse. I then have my Ashen Dawn go. They stab into the Thanes, wiping out like a majority of the back stands. I think that guy's down to like 1 or something. I don't break the unit, but they're like, the Thanes are pretty beat up. It's a lot of dice when you're rolling like was it 6 times 5? Yeah, because there's 5 stands. Well, so what, 30 dice? Oh boy. Oh boy. +1, so like 31 attacks into these guys. I didn't even have enough dice. I had to like figure out which ones didn't hit, and then after like, okay, rolling 4s, reroll 6s. Hit a bunch. Okay, these dice didn't hit. Okay, cool. I'm gonna roll these again, and just, you know, piled up and like did a bunch of damage. However, my opponent is defense 4 with hardened 1, so he's just defense 4 and saved a lot, but still I did a bunch of damage. Then he has, let's see here, what'd he do? I believe he has the Drake go, who just makes attacks into the household, or the mounted squires. Mountain squires just stab the Drake back. You could kind of tell they died, but they get 1 point of damage in. I got them down to 13 before they died, because then the Tempered Sorcerer activates, just burns them to death, and they're dead. Finally, he has his Hold Ballista. They just do a reform and then just shoot into the side, killing off that last stand of Ashen Dawn, who was weak, and then putting some damage into the other Ashen Dawn. Not the end of the world there. I'm not super worried, but it is kind of annoying. I then have my Household Knights. They just shimmy some more, looking at a good position, you know, stuff like that. They're just really sitting in that zone. And my opponent's Hold Warriors really just sit in that zone. So, things that died, things that get scored. I get 2 points for this regiment. My opponent gets 2 points for that regiment. And then we get our 2 or 3 points for each zone. I will have a score thing up on the side because I count this all after in editing. And yeah, that's turn 5. We're gonna go look at turn 6. Here's turn 6. I win the roll-off, and I have the Order of the Crimson Tower, run in, side charge, kill the Hellbringer Drake and the Rider on impact attacks, just wipe them out, and then I just move up another 7 inches, get into that position. So their next turn going to be looking at hitting the Thanes in the back, or just like running around over here to start getting into the Ballista, or even getting into the zone and into the Hold Warriors. So, you know, the plan's working out. I'm doing that big swing. I'm hitting things in the back and the side finally, kind of getting what I want to do with the Shock Cavalry. I've crippled and crumped this entire right flank, so it's all mine. My opponent then goes, Dragon Slayers activate, kill the Household Knights. However, because the Noble Lord didn't activate, the Noble Lord gets to fight back, and because he has 5 attacks and he's like class 3 with that Flesh Cleaver, I roll my attacks, and then my opponent gets hit a bunch, who then once again rolls a bunch of 6s and takes double damage, and then takes a bunch of resolve, and he's left with 1 stand of 1 health. And I'm like, okay, I'm really looking at it. My next card draw is Household Knights, and I'm like, okay, there's 3 of you. I don't really expect the world out of you, but he's at 1 health. Just kill him, please. I need him gone. I'm up on points at this point. I need to just start securing more and more and more as we go. And I just charge the Household Knights in and just do the 1 point of damage on the impact attack. My opponent, once again, rolls another 6 for his defense roll, kills the guy. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm just going to start backing up 3.5 inches after I'm done killing you to try and get back into that zone. And that's really all their goal is now, because next turn they're just going to, you know, back up like 7 and get into that zone, and I'm fine. Another thing I have to mention, this was my Supremacy turn, so I did declare Supremacy off of the Order of the Prior Commander. Maybe I'll just select it with green so it's easier to see. There we go. This gives Bless to everybody. I didn't use it on the impact attacks of the Order of the Crimson Tower, because it was like, alright, roll your defense. Like, you know, I was like, okay, that's a bunch of hits, and then my opponent just died. I'm like, okay, sweet. Yeah, my Ashen Dawn got in first before the Thanes attacked, so before this fight with the Dragon Slayers and everything, like before I sent in those Household Knights, I had the Ashen Dawn go, and they basically just went and fought these guys over here, the Thanes. So, you know, they killed this stand. I believe the one behind them is on like a couple wounds, nothing too crazy. This stand is dead. And then my opponent, you know, has the Thanes fight back and basically does nothing, because I think this is still at 4 health from last turn because of that Supremacy ability with the Harden +1 if you already have Bless. So I ignore all their cleave, and then I just roll my dice and then just do a big reroll, and I'm fine. And because I can't reroll on volley actions, these Hold Ballistas on the left, I'm like, okay, I'm fine being shot by them. So he does no damage there. He's lost stuff. He knows the Order of the Crimson Tower are coming. Household Knights after this kill off those Dragon Slayers that I already talked about. And this is where the game is called, because my opponent's like, okay, you obviously got this. Order of Crimson Tower, they're going to hit me in the back or just go for another position. Order of the Ashen Dawn are holding me back and just going to slowly beat the Thanes to death. And once the Thane's dead, it's just like I have nothing really that can kill any of your stuff, so we call it there. And that's the end of the game. So with that, I'm going to go over the score, and then I'm going to do an end-game chat. And yeah, so let's go look at the score. Here's the score. We ended on turn 6. We scored our points. My opponent's at 14, while I'm at 20. My opponent did score points for killing the Household Knight Regiment and the Warlord. I scored points for killing his Hellbringer Drake and his Dragonslayer unit, but kind of at this point it's done and over for my opponent. He doesn't have enough steam left in him to really keep going. Like, that Ashen Dawn unit you saw in the middle is just really holding out, kind of defending itself from 2 regiments and like fighting anvil to anvil, but my anvil's better than his. So it's just cutting through his stuff. Even if it's taking shots from the side, the shots aren't good enough quality to really put a dent into the Ashen Dawn, while the rest of the horses are running around cleaning up all the other stuff on the right side and securing that flank for me as I transition to just head over to the left. And you can kind of see in there how I basically did like a big push and punch on the right side to then swing around to the left, just because I was looking at the table before the game started, and the 2 obstructions on the left side there kind of blocking up that zone didn't really allow me to widen my regiment's files, so they couldn't be as long, or like left to right. Yeah, left to right. So I was kind of like, okay, what do I do? How am I going to win this? I'm like, well, what if I just deploy like the anvil unit in the middle, and then just have all my hammer cavalry come around on the right side, hit stuff, kill it, and then just start swinging as I start, rotating and swinging everything leftward to go across the table and take my opponent's zone. And I was really eyeballing the center objective, my opponent's objective, and my zone. And once I kind of killed those and scored those, I was up on points, but puts my opponent behind and kind of puts stress and pressure onto them to go get stuff done. You can regain points by killing your opponent's stuff, but now you're kind of forced into a bad position because your opponent has a lead, and so you might make tactical misplays or blunders that your opponent, or as myself, took over. Like, my opponent charged with the Hellbringer Drake while we were talking about it after. He probably should have just like sat there and shot, to be honest. Mountain Squires I really liked and did a good job of just kind of tying up things and then dying. Like, they really do their job well of just getting into range units and tying them up so that they can stop shooting me. I don't really care if they die, especially if I have something that's going to follow up and actually kill the thing they're tying up. Fleshkeeper on the Mounted Warlord, I was really surprised by it. It did actually a surprising amount of work. It is kind of not held back, but contained by dice rolls. So if your opponent isn't rolling any 6s for defense, you're not benefiting it from a huge amount unless you're getting the Feed Hunter part. But just having Deadly Blades is such a nice little thing to have on a character to just do that extra bit of damage. What else can I say? Ashen Dawn, once again, phenomenal. If you see my last battle report, I sing their praise. I continue to sing their praise. They change up how 100 Kingdoms plays, and I like it. And I wouldn't be surprised if more players went for more horses and more cavalry, just because it works and it's nice to play, and you have a tanky cavalry unit that can hold the line and allow you to set up those charges with your cavalry to benefit from wedge and brutal impact and not get tied up in that march charge. Like, one of the easiest ways to get rid of cavalry, or not get rid of them, but to tie them up and diminish their results, is to really just march charge anything into them, because the majority of them are speed 7. So they're not charging from that far away, so you could just march charge, get into them, and then just stall them. And then you could just beat them to death with your sticks or whatever. Like, that's the issue with cavalry. So having that Anvil Ashen Dawn unit that wants to get into fights but doesn't mind being charged is great, because they set the line, and then the rest of your cavalry can come in and hit things, or be free to go around and hit other stuff, and they're not worried about being just march charged and tied up and then beaten to death. And just I don't know if you like it if someone came over and pulled you off your horse and then hit you with a stick until you died. Like, I wouldn't appreciate that either. But Ashen Dawn kind of solved that problem just through positioning and play. overall, Dash Moon, I like the list. It did well. You can see it right here. I think I played it pretty decently. You can tell me if I'm wrong. I liked where everything was going. That extra stand on the mounted squires for 4 stands instead of 3, what I normally play as, was actually really good. Kept them alive a little longer. You increased the Household Knight bus a little bit. It's fine, did its job, worked great. And yeah, I didn't mind having 5 stands of Ashen Dawn. I myself prefer 2 3-stand units just so that I can be in different spots with those Anvil Ashen Dawn. Because if you saw my last game, there was like Ashen Dawn charged slingers, killed the slingers, veterans charged in, hunting pack charged in, and like there was one Ashen Dawn with 1 moon left, like holding off the world, and then I was setting with my Order of Crimson Towers and my Household Knights, but my opponent couldn't go anywhere because they're stuck on this one guy with 1 health, and he's just like, I am the tank of the world. So for myself, I prefer smaller units of those anvils just so that I can put them in different spots and hold out more. While even with the 5 stands of them, it just means that one spot is never falling, or it's going to take forever or an ungodly amount of work to get that done. For my opponent, there's a couple misplays, and also my opponent is playing with what they own, so, you know, it's like you play with what you have, and my opponent has what he's playing today. I think things I think he did well was double deploying those Dragon Slayers to be like, okay, if you win the roll and hit a unit of Dragon Slayers, I'm just going to draw the other Dragon Slayer card and hit the other thing. And if I win the roll, I'm going to hit you with Dragon Slayers, and if I'm lucky enough, I'm going to guess the thing that you're going to draw first, weakening it, and then you draw it, it's weakened, and then I draw the next Dragon Slayers and hit the thing that's strong, but then weakens it again when you draw and it's weakened, so then you're winning that engagement. But I got lucky and won the roll-off. My opponent did do a valid and very good strategy of having both those guys be his top 2 cards on his deck during that turn when I charged him with my Household Knights and my Crimson Towers. For the Hellbringer Drake, if you can avoid melee basically at all costs, the thing does more output with its guns, it keeps the rider safe who can then just shoot at other stuff and isn't bothered to be shot at anything he's engaged with. Because once the regiment gets tied up, the caster has to only shoot offensive spells at the thing that's tying them up. And if it's mounted squires, yay, they can burn to death, I don't really care. Get the things that can kill the Drake closer. Hold Thanes, fantastic anvil unit with a bit of a bite there. That cleave 1 just helps so much on them, and they like running a hold random just helps them out even more. I think my opponent used Hold Ballistas pretty well. The Hold Warriors probably could have got split into 2 MSUs to just kind of run as quickly as they could in front of the Ballista, especially the one with the Tempered Sorcerer. Because that juice Tempered Sorcerer with like Focus, Arcane 1 through 3, the re-rolling Heirloom or whatever it is, get an extra spell for a morale test, like that wizard is the one that's going to be doing a ton of damage. And so you want to protect that guy as much as possible, especially if you make that guy your warlord. My opponent made the Hold Raegh the Warlord because that's what he wanted to play and that's what he wanted to do. And that's fine, but your wizards do so much work and you have to protect them, and basically all your Hold Warriors, Hold Thanes, Dragon Slayers should just be sacrifice themselves to protect wizards, unless it's like, hey, you know, this needs to protect it to again go that, like, you know, like the game changes or what you're playing game changes, but majority of the time you can kind of go with like keep the wizards alive, because the longer they're on the table the more work they will do, and you'll just see like returning dividends as they stay alive. Yeah, what else can I say? Bonk Table is a podcast. Episode 3 came out last Friday. I don't know when this battle report's going up, truthfully. But if I check really quick, it came out on the 16th. It's about scenario. I think a lot of people like it. I'd say go check that one out. You can also find it on YouTube, but you can find it wherever you listen to podcasts: Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Play. I don't know. Like, it's on all that stuff. What else? We Bonk Table made a Discord. I'll probably put the link in the description below. That's for you to enjoy and come in if you want to talk about Bonk Table or Conquest or maybe even some other miniature games you're interested in. Share some of your hobby stuff, all that things. It'll be great. Just looking to grow, looking to expand. I hope everyone enjoyed this battle report, and I hope you have a great day. Bye.